This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Weird Way Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chasing Chevy Chase podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris Dashu, and I'm joined by my two good friends all the way from Weirding Way Media's Cambridge and Wishawn, Mark Begley.
I think the three of us make a wonderful pair, which is a quote from the movie, but also I think describes our relationship.
Aww, wow. How touching. And also joining us all the way from the Projection Booth podcast, Mr. Mike White.
I'm not outside eating chicken, that's for sure.
That was my second choice. That
Best
was my
line
second
in the
choice.
Entire movie. And if you don't know what this show's about, if you can't tell from the title, we are talking about the films of Mr. Chevy Chase. We've talked so far about Caddyshack and Foul Play, and now we're gonna find out if it seems like old times with 1980s Jay Sanders directed, Neil Simon written, Seems Like Old Times. Yes, this is a movie that the three of us watched, and now we're gonna talk about it.
I can't believe you forgot Oh Heavenly Dog, by the way.
Oh my God.
I'm a little mad about that. I'll stand up for that movie to my dying day.
I guess so.
I don't know if you two saw, but Cindy Morgan, who was in Caddyshack as, what was her name? Lacey Underall, just passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday.
Jeez.
Wow.
69. Not even that old.
No.
So the depressing nature of this show aside, because most of the movies we're talking about have people from the 70s and 80s. Mark, I'm going to kick it to you first. What did you think revisiting Seems Like Old Times?
Well, I wanted to say that this is another one of his that I saw in the theater. And like Caddyshack, it came out in 1980. I don't necessarily know if I saw it when it first ran. I just know that I saw it on a visit down south to my cousin's place, and they lived in Orange County, like Newport Beach, and we all went and saw it. That's my strong memory of the movie. It could have been, second run or a year, 6 months later, but we might have been down there for Christmas or something. That's around the time it came out. And this was one of those movies that I caught on TV or cable or rental quite a few times, but it's been at least 40 years probably since I've seen it.
Damn.
Yeah. And so there was the overall story I kind of remembered, and as things popped up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember all this. I remember that. The opening in Carmel was always kind of a big deal for us because that's Central Coast, California, and a lot of people from the Valley go there during the summer to cool off and be in a nice place. And I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. I was probably excited about that stuff when I was younger watching it. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's kind of sitcom-y, and I think that has a lot to do with the director, because this was his sole, unless I missed something scrolling through his IMDb credits, which were quite extensive, this was his sole feature film, and everything else was TV series or TV movies. Possible I missed something, but it has that feel every once in a while, especially with their stage set home and backyard. But then it ventures away from that, when they're outside, and of course they can swear and all that stuff. But that stuff kind of bugged me. The wrong man aspect can get annoying to me, but overall I enjoyed it quite a bit. Didn't mind revisiting this one.
Not the way you did that damn dog movie that I forgot about. Speaking of the dog movie, Mike, similar question posed to you about Seems Like Old Times.
So like we talked about on the Foul Play episode, I used to get these two movies mixed up, and I have no idea why, because they are so different. Yeah. I mean, I guess, Mark, to your point, as far as the whole wrong man thing, because this is a wrong man film, very Hitchcockian in that way, but Foul Play is total like Hitchcock light. Whereas with this one, it is Neil Simon. It is a like you said, a sitcom. I think if we turn that dinner set like 45 degrees or maybe 90 degrees, and we had the kitchen over on the left-hand side or the right-hand side and had all of the goings on, because we have all that action in the kitchen that we don't see. I mean, that's very, very similar to like, even going back to Lucy. Lucy had the kitchen over on the right-hand side and then the living room in the middle there, and they could also dine in that area. So all of that stuff, I can definitely see that. This is a just in time for Christmas movie, as the trailer says. I'm not sure why a Christmas movie, but it probably would have been good for the whole family to see, something for everybody. And I rewatched this one, like I said, for the Foul Play episode, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember liking it when I was younger. I don't think I had an appreciation of Charles Grodin for a long time. I used to just think he was a jerk, but then I realized that he's playing a jerk, and he plays a jerk like nobody's business. He is so great at playing a jerk. And in this one, I can see why he's angry at his wife all the time. But also, to your point, Mark, had Chevy Chase taken like 15 minutes to explain himself, and especially to have a conversation with Charles Grodin, I don't see this movie even existing. They could have found these other two guys. I mean, Robert Guillaume solves the entire case with a sentence way late
screen, almost.
Yes, exactly. But I do think, that there is a lot of TV-ish to this, but the one thing I liked was the introduction of characters through photographs, how we had the idea of, or the introduction of scenes through photographs, the fax image of Chevy Chase, which is better than any fax image I've ever seen in my entire life. That being the introduction to the Charles Grodin scene, and then Grodin looking at the picture of Goldie Hawn and that becoming the Goldie Hawn scene. I thought that was a very nice way to do it, but that's kind of the end of the cinematic stuff. After that, it becomes much more TV. How about you, Chris? What did you think of this one?
So, had not seen this before, so this was a first watch, and I watched it 3 times for the episode that we're doing right now. I think it's for me, it suffers because Foul Play is a much more fun movie. I think Foul Play is a much more interesting premise. I mean, obviously, Foul Play doesn't have Charles Grodin, so this movie has that over Foul Play. What I found to be odd about this movie is you kind of already mentioned it, both of you have, like, all you got to do is tell people what's going on. That's it. Like, it at some point I was just like, for fuck's sake, how much more contrived does this have to be? And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy the movie. I really have a hard time getting as contrived as the movie wants me to get, because there is no universe where you, if this happened to you, wouldn't just be like, I'm innocent. Like, I'm not going to keep running from the cops. That just makes it look like I'm more guilty than I am. And yeah, I mean, it's a comedy of errors, in a lot of ways. Chevy Chase hides under more beds in this movie than I've ever seen him hide under. But the thing I'm kind of surprised by that neither one of you guys had mentioned, since we talked about it a little bit already, what is this, Chevy Chase Pratfalls, the movie? Like, it's
oh boy,
so much to the point where I am surprised neither one of you mentioned it, because we've mentioned this before. This whole Chevy,
it's definitely, it's on my list. Of complaints.
Yeah,
his stuntman is getting such a workout in this movie.
Unnecessarily. It's like so unneeded, and it's not. None of it is funny. And I know that all of it was meant to be funny, because that is, at this time in '80, that's the Chevy Chase shtick. That's the gag. But it ain't funny.
In the bank, in the garage, in any room.
He's walking with a limp eventually.
And they're not done very well. I'm sorry, but they're not done very well.
They're not done well at all. And that's the thing with this movie for me. It's like,
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. When you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself, talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Again, if I had seen this before Foul Play, I might feel differently. But I like everything more in Foul Play because the characters don't feel like complete fucking morons. And here, the main character of Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase, like, she's great and he's great, and Charles Grodin's great also, but Charles Grodin's character is not the idiot character. It's the Chevy Chase character, and by extension Goldie Hawn, because she, in this movie, it's like, I don't know how she doesn't know better, because it's made very clear that she does know better, which is why she's not with her husband anymore, Chevy Chase. But yeah, like, halfway through the movie, you're just like, why is she even, like, why is Charles Grodin with this person? He would have left by now. Like, because, and I mean, especially where the movie ends up going, like, the movie doesn't want to take a stand on Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. It wants us to kind of just be like, oh, it's fine that she's with Charles Grodin, but she also still feels for Chevy Chase, which is fine. It's just, I think for the normies out there, for a lot of people, I think her character just would come off as weird for anybody. Just on the face of it, given kind of where this movie goes and how this movie kind of ends. But I enjoyed it. Like I said, I just think it feels a little derivative of something that, again, I enjoyed more, but I enjoyed this too. It's just I didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, they are really going for, if we were going for Hitchcock in the first one, in Foul Play, we are going for screwball comedy big time in here.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Mark, your line about the three of us make a good couple. So many of these Neil Simon lines feel like they're out of a 1940s film, if not even 1930s film. There's a lot of like His Girl Friday type patter that we have in here. And that stuff works. That stuff lands for me almost every single time. And it made me laugh out loud quite a few times because I do enjoy a clever turn of phrase. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, yeah, that was good. But yeah, just the overarching plot doesn't hold together. Like, had they up the stakes at all. Like when he has been thrown out of the car and goes to a gas station and is trying to get milk duds out of the candy machine, it's not coming. And then the gas station attendant shows up. It should have been something should have happened there in order to make it seem like he's some sort of mad dog killer and like really cemented him into that role. Instead, it's still way too easy for him to just tell the truth and explain things away. I wanted it to look like all fingers were pointing towards him and to make it really inescapable for him to get out of that situation. More forces needed to be working against him.
If he, the gas, him, seeing his face in the paper and going, oh, and then calling the cops and say, he robbed me too. And
right.
That trip, Big Sur to LA is a substantial distance. So I don't even know how he gets to Goldie Hawn's house, but
walking for 2 days, Mark. That's what he said.
Okay.
You're telling me that the makers of this movie don't understand California distances?
Yeah. So if a person can walk an average of 4 miles an hour, if he walked 48 literal hours, I don't think he would make it there. Wow.
Yeah, it would have made more sense if he lived in Santa Barbara. But the fact that people have to act like idiots to make the conceit of the film work is what drives me crazy. And
it's literally the base conceit of the movie. It is the singular conceit of the entire film, and it makes no sense.
Yeah, he's prepared to hold her up, steal the car again, and keep going. And it's like, why? It's not. This is easy to clear up. There has to be other footage of these two guys.
Right.
And there was. There literally was too. There literally is.
Mickey escaped from prison and eventually hijacks that young man. I think his name was P.W. Herman, and ends up getting a ride from him after he breaks out of prison. So this is a known recidivist.
Yes. I mentioned that. I'm like, hey, Cleo, he's in Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure. And I said, he's the guy in the car. And she's like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And he got the short end of the stick when it came to the longer version of Dune, because I think Jamis is almost completely cut out of the theatrical version. But for me, he'll always be a good Jamis. May thy knife chip and shatter.
I saw that credit and I was like, who's that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's very, very cut out of that. Eventually, Paul beats Jamis, kills Jamis, and then he gets his family. He's the guy that they liquidate for his water, and then Paul is in charge of Jamis's water and also his family, his 2 sons and his wife.
Dune's real
interesting.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Speaking of real weird, before we talk further about the movie, something I wanted to point out because it's been really bothering me. The theatrical poster for this movie is without a doubt one of the most bizarre theatrical posters because it makes Goldie Hawn look like the Mrs. Voorhees shriveled head in Friday the 13th Part 2. It's weird, and Chevy Chase is laughing as well. I don't know, I think for me,
what poster are you looking at? Because I see one with 2 of them in bed.
It's the one that's the Robert Tannenbaum one that has their heads on the top. And they're
I see. I'll have to look for that because I'm only familiar with Goldie Hawn in bed next to Charles Grodin. There's dogs all around, and Chevy Chase is sticking out underneath the bed with his hands in his head.
It's a little variation of that. They're in bed as well with dogs, Chevy's, but then there's 2 floating heads above this little rectangle. And Chevy is laughing like an absolute maniac. And apparently
I see it.
Nobody knew what the Goldie Hawn looked like.
She literally, I don't know if anyone had ever seen Goldie Hawn before making this poster, but Goldie Hawn, then, now, and forever, is a gorgeous woman. And that is not Goldie Hawn.
They don't have her nose.
Wow.
They don't have her nose right at all.
She looks like Diane Cannon.
It's
Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see Farrah much more. And then, that look on Chevy Chase's face. Holy shit.
Like I said, like I wanted to point that out because I didn't know if you guys had seen it, but
I
just kept looking at that poster and being like, if I saw this poster in the theaters when I was walking out, this is not something I would readily gravitate towards because, and that's the thing, like what I did enjoy about this movie is that it starts immediately. It like there's no wasted time at the beginning of the movie, but then about halfway through the movie when Chevy Chase is hid under a bed for like the fourth time, that's kind of where I'm like, oh, it feels a little wheel spinning. It felt like this movie's an hour and 40 minutes, and I think you probably could have gotten away with like 10 minutes less of just one more time hiding under the bed. Like, we don't need to see it another time.
Yeah. When he comes back and hides under the bed, I think one of the last times, it's so like, why did you give up your earlier plan? How did you get back here?
Yeah, why did he come back? That was my big question.
Right.
I knew he was going to be under the bed, but it's like, what happened?
Well, it's like he can't. The last time we see him before that is him driving off and he can barely drive. And then I think we hear Grodin say, oh, he sold, was it the car stereo and something else in the car?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay. So he's moving. So where is he going to? And then, why is he suddenly back here? And I'm always curious, like I kept looking for, since this is Neil Simon, I kept seeing like, was this a play at some point? And I could not determine that it was a play at any point. It seems like this was written for the screen.
Yeah, that was my understanding. So a lot like Murder by Death, I guess.
Yeah. I have to say I like Murder by Death a lot more than this. And this too. Also, I didn't realize just how many times Grodin and Neil Simon had worked together until I was reading a little bit of Grodin's autobiography. And they got along okay, but they weren't always happy with each other. But yeah, he had been in TV. Grodin had been in The Heartbreak Kid and quite a few other both plays and movies that were based on Neil Simon stuff.
You mentioned his ability to play the jerk, and I always think of his Letterman appearances in that regard.
Oh yeah, his appearance in So I Married an Axe Murderer when they're trying to commandeer his car, and it's just like, no.
It's not quite as pointed in this, and I think maybe it's because of your other point is that he's sort of right to be angry with her.
Oh yeah,
throughout the whole movie, and I was missing that because when I saw the movie, I probably had no real clue as to who he was or that whole persona of his. But these days, I was expecting him to be a little more bited and quippy he could have matched Chevy in repartee,
Yeah.
And the other thing, and beside the pratfalls, I think that we discuss about Chevy is the quips, and they're like the pratfalls. This is probably the quippiest so far of the 4 movies, including Foul Play, that we've done. And that whole exchange in his car on the way to the bank, I really enjoyed, actually.
Oh yeah,
that's peak Chevy Chase.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. I'm like, this is working for me.
That works. And then I like this whole thing too, how we have this theme of like the bank robbers talk for Chevy at one point. Every time the gas station guy, another gas station guy, asks him, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm going to this place. And they correct him, and he corrects himself. Well, you get that. And then you get that later on where he is speaking for Goldie Hawn. Like, she's trying to give a story and he's there correcting her and getting her stuff. So I was like, well, that's kind of a nice little parallel there between those two scenes. I mean, I think there's a lot of clever things in this. I just don't know if it holds together 100%, but I had a lot of fun going back to it anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I enjoy where this movie is going, and I had a sufficiently good enough time with it. But it is like so much of it takes place in their house that it does feel like a play. And I honestly wonder, like, if this had been a play, if it would have worked better, if Neil Simon would have shored up some of the stuff that wouldn't have needed to be there because it was a play and not a movie. Because the character interactions, for the most part, are solid. It's almost everything else that's going on, like all of the actual trappings of the plot, seem to be at odds with how well written the dialogue is. And that shouldn't be surprising given that it's Neil Simon, obviously. Like, you know, of people who write for theater and movies, there are very few people I would rather have writing something for me than like a Neil Simon. But this, I don't know, it suffers for me at least, because again, like what they're inherently all engaged in is not that interesting. And the movie is really trying to convince us that there is a level of threat here to Chevy Chase's character that we should be worried about. Because like we've already mentioned, if there's not really an external threat in this movie. The bank robbers show up at the beginning and then they show up at the end, which also feels contrived and tacked on.
Oh, yes.
and so that's the thing. It's like anytime the movie is doing anything with the plot, I kind of check out. But whenever it's just Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn interacting, or the few times that Chevy Chase and Charles Grodin interact, which is limited, unfortunately, that's the parts of the movie that really work for me. But for the most part, there's just a lot of like, it's just a weird movie because I know it's a comedy, but in a lot, like once about the first 30 minutes is over, I wasn't laughing as much as I was in the first half of the movie, the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Well, they missed opportunities for jokes. Like there's this whole thing of she kind of gets everything settled with Chevy Chase. He's going to stay in this extra room. And then she's like, well, I'll take care of the extra room. The next morning she wakes up and Charles Grodin is gone. And so she panics, but you have her in bed and she's like, you know, oh, what's going on? You know, just very groggy and all this. She should have turned over, and rather than there being no Charles Grodin there, that St. Bernard should have been there, because that would have been funnier. And there's a lot of times where I was just like, oh, you missed an opportunity for a joke here. And I'm playing, like, as I'm rewriting this movie for poor Neil Simon, RIP, it's just like, hey, you've got Rosita or whatever her name is, you've got Aurora, you've got Chester, you've got all of these dogs. Like, between all of them together, you could so amp up some of this comedy in here. Instead, poor Aurora feels like she's just like, other than her accent, she doesn't have a whole lot to do. I like Chester. I'm really glad that TK Carter isn't in this, and I think he does a great job. Though again, I wish they could have just amped it up a little bit more.
I think his scenes are my favorite. Just him eating the hors d'oeuvres off the plate when he's serving, getting drunk, driving the car, all that stuff. To me is wonderful. I love him. You know, the Chris, you mentioned the external threat, and really the only threat, it's not like there's a nationwide manhunt for Chevy Chase. It doesn't even seem like there's a statewide manhunt.
Those two cops barely even recognize him.
Right. The only people it affects are Charles Grodin and, in a way, Goldie Hawn, because they're married, but it's really his threat because he's gunning for Attorney General of the state. And so, again, clear it up with him. Clear it up amongst yourselves. When he shows up, Goldie Hawn already knows that he's wanted. He explains the story. She does explain it to him. Of course, he doesn't buy it, but just bring them together to explain it. She tries to get him to do that, but he refuses. But the whole thing with the bank robbers at the end, that courtroom scene, is completely unnecessary because Robert Guillaume already has the picture of them. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of contrived, them holding up Aurora, of all people, to do this again, I guess is just to initiate that courtroom scene of having everybody be there and the dogs and everything else that's been going on in the house the whole time. It's already cleared up. Why are they even in court at that point?
How easy did Harold Gould have this role? Because he never even leaves the courtroom. I think he was there for like 3-4 days tops and shot all of his role right there.
Yeah, he's great though.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's always good.
No, I was going to say, I remembered, or since it's been so long since I've seen it, I knew she was a lawyer and Chevy's in trouble, and she's this lawyer with a heart of gold who hires all the people that she's representing to keep them out of trouble. You think there's actually going to be more courtroom stuff because that's her thing, and it would have been her job to clear his name. Mm-hmm. But it's just that end scene, or almost end scene. We'll talk about the end scene at some point because it's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
But that should have been the stuff, like her battling out in court, because I kept expecting him to get caught and then, okay, now we're going to have the courtroom stuff, and she's got to work to figure out who these guys are, track them down, et cetera, et cetera. And then it just all kind of Deus Ex Machinas itself into nothingness at the end.
What I was hoping was that all of these people that work for her were going to come together under her direction or something and be part of the finale of the show. Like somehow they would use the two Native American guys and they would track down the robbers and they would do something. And then Chester would do something. And then Aurora would do something. And then the dogs would do something, like some sort of like crazy. I mean, if we're in screwball territory, let's just do it up. You know, we've got all of these characters. Let's give them something to do. Those poor Native American guys, they get nothing other than they're basically recidivists again. They rob they steal the guy's car, and it's not from what I understand, it doesn't seem like it's a good reason. You know, they steal Grodin's car, and I'm like, oh well, that's funny. And then Chevy Chase steals his car, and I'm like, okay, well, give me more. Like, give me a third car steal. Well, I guess we do have a third car stealing, but it's a different car. So I'm like, okay, no, like again, let's use the genre and really amp up all of the proceedings.
Well, and that's the thing, like for me, like earlier in 2023, for the first time I saw What's Up, Doc? And it's like this movie is like a poor facsimile of that. Like there's no chase scene in this movie, but I feel like and I mentioned this only because you just mentioned the thing about the cars being stolen. I feel like there's a version of this movie where there was a car chase. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because again, like it would make sense in this kind of movie, the kind of movie that they're making and the other kinds of movies that have come out around this time that are doing the same thing, doing a, you know, quote, modern day at the time in the 80s slapstick comedy or like a farce, which is exactly like What's Up, Doc nails that tone so much better than this movie does. I mean, it's almost unfair to compare them, but I think a lot of it just goes back to the script and like, and the direction, because again, the script, what's funny for me is the script gives Charles Grodin nothing to do, literally. And it's so weird because he's third billed, but it feels like a Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn movie with Charles Grodin in it as an afterthought, which in my mind, again, puts me in the perspective of Neil Simon it needed like one or two more passes. Or there's a different cut of this movie, which I don't think is the case. I think it just, you know, I just think it had needed another pass because ultimately you don't get the sense that this is as much Charles Grodin's story as it is Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase's story. He really feels like the third wheel when he's Goldie Hawn's husband. Like per the narrative, he shouldn't be the third wheel, but because he is, you just don't get enough Charles Grodin, which is unfortunate because what he does do in this movie is pretty good for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it could very well be that all of those characters that she's helping had a bigger role, and we rewrote this to focus on Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase, because I know that he rewrote it during rehearsals and daily rewrites to emphasize their strengths more. So that's why we get the quippy, and I'm sure a lot of those quips were also ad-libbed, but we get the quippy Chevy Chase stuff. We get them constantly coming together, and those minor characters get sort of shoved out of the way as the movie progresses. There's a lot more of the Native Americans up until that party, the first party, not the dinner with the governor, and the other Hispanic girls that are helping Aurora. They're all people that she has represented, and
right. I forgot about them completely. That's how much they dropped out.
Yeah, and then they just kind of, when we don't need them anymore, but maybe they were needed later on, and it got changed as they were going. And let's focus on the Chevy Goldie stuff, because they were both, you know, pretty big stars by that point.
I mean, everybody knows that the real reason you watch this movie is to find out about one of life's true culinary masterpieces, which is chicken pepperoni.
Chicken pepperoni, yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah.
Which is literally just chicken cooked in like red sauce, like with pepperoni chunks in it.
I had to investigate because I'm like, is that a real thing?
It's real enough.
Half of the links that popped up were related back to this movie. Aurora's chicken pepperoni. And I thought, okay. And then there were actual recipes, but it's just like chicken parmesan with pepperoni thrown on top, you know, as the kind of internet recipes. But hers, yeah, I don't know. And then he throws that ivy into it. And I'm like, that might not be edible or that could be toxic. I wouldn't put that in the thing. But anyway.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like the chicken pepperoni thing was just, in my mind, it goes back to this movie just seems really all over the place. And that's one of the things for me that was like, I don't need to keep hearing about this, because like the joke, I don't know if it was ever funny in this movie, but they run some of the jokes into the ground, and they don't. And like you said, Mike, they also don't do stuff with some of the gags that they have set up. Like, I'm surprised how little they did with the dogs. Like, the dogs really don't even do anything. And there's like 7 dogs in your house at any one point. Like, again, another opportunity for something to be mined. And it just seems more like, not really. Let's just, again, like it's, if you wanted Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn, you got it. You got to give them more than nothing. And I don't know if Neil Simon really wanted to focus on anything else. But what's weird is, since you mentioned what you mentioned, Mark, if that were the case, why isn't everything between the two of them the best part of the movie? I mean, I guess it kind of is. That's the thing. Like, what is the ultimate strength of this movie? Because for me, the strength of foul play was the interactions between Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase. But those trappings of kind of a noir movie also help. In this movie, while they're fine together, every interaction that they have feels very one note. Like, they never feel like they're actually, because by the end of the movie, I guess we're expected to believe that they could get back together. I guess, like, I can't even really figure out what this movie wants for the characters. And because I can't figure out what the movie wants, what Neil Simon wants, I'm having a hard time understanding why they do the things that they do. It's just a lack of tangible character motivation.
Think that was tacked on? I have to believe that was a tacked on ending, because again, it doesn't really make sense.
Oh, why doesn't that make sense? No.
It seems like the end is, at the courthouse steps, and Charles Grodin says, okay, you can give her a kiss. And of course it goes on too long, and he starts to move toward them.
Actually, Charles Grodin says, I don't want you to kiss my wife.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And they do it anyways. No. I mean, Robert Guillaume has to like hold Charles Grodin back from beating the shit out of Chevy Chase. It's so tonally bizarre. Like,
well, then that whole setup of them in bed and Charles Grodin saying, hey, let's just take a trip and let's go wherever.
Right.
And again, they're leaving from LA in the middle of the night when it's raining, and somehow get to Big Sur, which is like 5.5, 6 hours on a good day drive from LA.
Hawn's used to working in the middle of the night. Remember all those rabbits she was killing in the middle of the night?
And ends up at his butt. I'm like, what in the world is this? And then that goofy smile, that freeze frame smile of hers at the end.
Yeah,
that's what they used. That's the frame they used to create those posters, Chris. I just figured it out.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah, you got any references? Got any reference material I can use for her face? Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, she's so cute, and the face that she makes is usually very cute. But that end shot, I was just like, she looks bad here. What is going on?
It looks like a horror movie. Like, it fades to blue, and she's just like looking proper rain drenched. Which, like, It's such a strange conceit what this movie really wants out of us, which is to believe that Goldie Hawn is really reconsidering being with Chevy Chase's character, who is, for all intents and purposes, a complete fuck up. Like, we never even get the sense that this guy, like, because they talk about him being a writer over and over again. He's a writer. We get it. He was in Mexico, and it seems like there was maybe like miscommunication, and he went to Mexican jail for 2 years. Either this guy is the most unlucky human being on the planet, or you should stay far away from him because he cultivates chaos wherever he goes. And I think it's the latter. And that's why, like, the ending, like, it's so weird that this movie needed Charles Grodin at all, because I think by having Charles Grodin, it makes this movie worse because it hurts the narrative even more. Because there's no realistic way that Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn end up together at the end of the movie. And that the movie wants us to get there so badly that they hijack their own narrative to get us there is unnecessary, to say the least.
And that poor Charles Grodin is in the car with a broken leg. What are they going to do? Boink for a couple hours and be like, oh shit, I forgot.
Yes.
You know what that ending reminds me of, Mike? I don't know if Chris has seen this movie, but when they approach the cow and the rain at night, I'm thinking, oh, are we going into Motel Hell territory here?
I kept thinking of that they were going to find Frankenstein's castle and that they'd be in the Rocky Horror Picture Show all of a sudden.
I would have preferred that to what we got.
There's a lie.
I know. Yeah. Charles Grodin and Goldie Hawn. Boy, that'd be something.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, and that is the thing. Like, Charles Grodin and Goldie Hawn have really good chemistry together because she plays such kind of like, I mean, and again, like, I don't know how much of this is character and how much of this is just Goldie Hawn, but she plays such a free spirit in the things that I've seen her in, that he is such a wet blanket of a human being that they work really well together, playing off of one another. That's why when she's opposite Chevy Chase, it's like they're both kind of competing for screen time as opposed to being complementary. And they were complementary in Foul Play, but that's also because that was a Goldie Hawn movie. Like, at its core, it was and that's the thing, like, is this Chevy Chase's movie more than anybody else's, or this is Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase's movie? Because it's not Charles Grodin's movie. That's for fucking damn sure.
It feels very much like this is Chevy Chase's movie. That there's billing, of course, but that she's introduced third. It feels like we have already established Chevy Chase as a character, and then we even establish what's going on with Grodin even more than what we do with her, because her court scenes are pretty light when it comes to, I mean, we just get the explanation of, I hire the people that I defend in court.
Right. Which is fine. But yeah, it honestly feels like there's just stuff missing from this movie, like additional scenes that I think would have helped flesh out the narrative a little bit more. But that's the other thing. Like, they wrote themselves into this corner. And by they, I mean Neil Simon. That's the thing. Like, I don't know why you needed to have so many moving parts here, and I don't know why Chevy Chase had to keep coming back over and over again, because that's where this movie drags for me, is this kind of tired bullshit of Chevy Chase hiding under the bed, and we have these like extended character interactions on top of the bed, and it's supposed to be funny because he's under the bed and we know it, but Charles Grodin doesn't. But like, how many times can you do this gag? Because the first time, okay, fine. The second time, all right. Third time, holy shit. The fourth time, it's like, all right, I'm good. I'm good. Even if he's not under the bed, they're still playing those scenes like he is, some of them. And it's just like, why do we need to see these same scenes over and over again? Because Charles Grodin's character, given that he seems like a smart human being, would have left. He would have just left. He wouldn't continue to put up with this weird ass behavior from Goldie Hawn. Because again, like, that's the thing. You see her character before Chevy Chase shows up and she seems rather well put together. And then the moment he shows up, he derails everything, like systematically derails everything. And Charles Grodin just is like, okay, fine. Like, my wife is enamored with this other man that she used to be married to. I guess I'm okay with that. It's like, don't include this character. Just have Goldie Hawn be single and just, and you know,
into it.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that's the thing. Like, in this day and age, like, you could remake this movie and make it about that. The interactions between three people that are in a weird, non-conventional relationship. I just don't think in 80 they were really able to tackle it. If they were trying to tackle it at all, which I don't think they were, like, this is not a Lucky Lady situation.
No.
There's no implication here of anything between the three of them the way it is in Lucky Lady. So that's the other thing. Like, maybe that would have been the pivot a little bit and lean on the idea that like the three of them together work better than the two of them together. And like, they don't even go there. So I don't know. It honestly just, there's a lot of really strange opportunities that are taken and ones that are missed.
Speaking of the under the bed scenes, the one that drove me crazy was when Grodin was standing on Chase's finger and repeats the whole story,
the entire thing,
and kind of flubs it though. And I'm like, you're not on his face. Couldn't you have ADR'd that so that it came out a little sharper and cleaner? And he stutters through it, and I don't think that's really supposed to be his character. It's like they took the actual, you know, source sound and just used that dialogue. And I'm thinking, man, this could have been a lot punchier. It was weird. It seemed odd to me.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, because that was odd, that just to have her explain everything and then have him re-explain it back to her line by line by line. I was like, wow, you couldn't condense that somehow? Like this, it went on for way too long, and just that static shot of the foot on the finger, and with Chevy Chase doing all those hand motions. I'm like, okay, this goes on for a long time, Jay. You might want to cut away from this.
It was way
her
too long.
Face, even just like with like a, oh my gosh, what's going on here kind of thing. Because we don't even know if she sees that happening, frankly.
Yeah, there's no indication. And it's kind of funny. At one point, Grodin says, or Ira, his character says, you could have pointed under the bed and I think I would have figured it out.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you're kind of giving away one of your own mistakes in the movie here.
Right.
Well, and the other, I guess the other big conceit for me that I have a hard time wrapping my head around, and again, this is just like I don't know, like one of those like that guy movies, or a man in trouble movies, is the Charles Grodin's character in this movie. Like, again, like I have a hard time believing the idea that he's going to be in such trouble if Chevy Chase is on the lam for stealing money. Like, this guy is the attorney general of the state, is going to be the attorney general of the state of California. I really don't think this has any bearing on his life, other than the fact that this guy is in your fucking house now and your wife is aiding and abetting a fugitive. Yeah, that's a problem.
Now it is. Yes.
Now it is. But like beforehand, he's just like, no, I have to deal with this now. And that's like, what? I don't think
I have to get him. I mean, I guess that's the conceit, is it should be clearer that he is on the hunt for him.
Right.
Because of, being Glenda, or what is her name? Keeps calling her Glenn.
Glenn, yeah. I guess it's Glenda. Could be Glenn or Glenda.
Her first husband and this and that, make it really adversarial instead of just more of a jealousy thing. It seems like.
Well, can't even figure out what it is. Because again, like Charles Grodin lets his wife get like full-on tongue kissed at the end of the movie by Chevy Chase. And Robert Guillaume holding Charles Grodin back is fine, but I'm with you, Mark. It's like I find this all a little hard to believe because the movie itself never lays down any sort of rules for what this is supposed to be, what this relationship is, or what even Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn's relationship was before this all happened. We never get a sense of like how did they got divorced, why? Like, that's the question. Like, because, and that's the other thing, like, I can never figure that out because the movie, for all the times it says, well, this is my ex-husband, Nick, and this is my ex-husband, and this is my current husband. We never really get a sense as to why they weren't together, because when they're together, yeah, she seems a little put upon, but I mean, she still manages to exist in her world without Chevy Chase. But when he shows up, the movie wants us to believe that, like, he is some sort of chaos introducing force into her life. And it all seems self-inflicted by Goldie Hawn's character. And that makes her, again, seem like an even bigger dumb character in this movie, seemingly full of big dumb characters and not dumb in a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Is he even a good writer? Like, he's up there at that cabin writing. Did he ever write that story about the Mexican drug dealers? Did he write a Pulitzer-winning story at all in his career? Is he working on novels now? Have his novels sold? Is he one of these guys that dicks around and says he's going to write the great American novel and never does, or has a manuscript 12,000 pages high that no one's ever going to read? Like, what kind of person is this guy? We don't really know. And yeah, to your point, why did they get divorced? We get a little bit of that, but not anything concrete where you're like, Nick, you were always doing this. Nick, you were always doing that. And then at the end, like, oh, I've changed. No, he hasn't changed. He's the same Nick.
And it's that lack of character arc in this movie that really just rings true to, again, the idea of like, I just wish Neil Simon had gone over this one more time. Because, and again, I mean, if you really wanted this to be the Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn movie, then I think you really need to lean on that more and not have them separated because she's with someone else for a third of the movie, namely the Charles Grodin character. Not because they don't have any like worthwhile interactions. It's just her and Chevy Chase are so good together. You want to just see the two of them. It's not a Charles Grodin isn't a talented actor. It's just their chemistry is really good, which is why they're in this movie together.
Yeah. They're trying to recapture the same magic that they had before, but putting them in this situation doesn't work. Had it been more of a sequel to Foul Play rather than we're just going to take these two actors and put them together. And I know we get that a lot. I know that we have, like, I didn't realize how many movies Julia Roberts and George Clooney have made together until it was asked in a trivia contest. And I'm just like, the Ocean's movies. And then I'm like, no memory of any other movies that they've done together, which apparently has been like 4 or 5. So I'm like, oh, okay. But it's not like, oh, they made such a great impression in Ocean's 11 that I want to see them in more movies together like these two, where it's like, oh, wow, Foul Play. That was great. Let's see them in more stuff.
And that is why this movie exists, in my opinion, right? But it's like, it's a lesser version of that because of primarily just the plot. Like the performances are fine, but it's just the plot gets so contrived after about the first half hour that, yeah, the movie, it almost feels like the movie is spending most of its time trying to convince you why he hasn't just done the obvious thing. Like, why hasn't he just done the obvious thing? Oh, because her husband's the attorney general and he doesn't like Chevy Chase, so that's why. And it's like, and he won't believe him. It's like, oh, come on. Like, I don't know. Like, Charles Grodin's character doesn't seem that implacable. He seems like he could be reasoned with. And that's, again, like, that's a failing of the script for not, like we've already mentioned, writing the character a further off the dial character. He's just not. He needs to be, I guess he needs to be more of an asshole is really what it is. Like Charles Grodin's character needs to be more of an asshole in this movie. Like and you see it with Goldie Hawn where he's like freaking out at her, but when he's around Chevy Chase, like this guy has every right to like sock Chevy Chase in the fucking face over and over and over and over again. And he doesn't because again, like that's not what the script necessitates, but it should have, because at least we would understand that like this guy just doesn't want to deal with her ex-husband anymore. And he just seems like, oh my God, I guess I'll just let him have his fun until he chooses to leave, versus me just being like, get out of here, out of our lives completely.
Here's what they could have done. That picture of the 2 bank robbers that Robert Guillaume gets could have been introduced way earlier, and Grodin buries it. And that also kind of makes the end courtroom scene make sense, where now they have actually done it to Aurora and it's the same 2 guys and they drag, and there's no getting around it. Robert Guillaume knows this. He recognizes their faces from the picture, et cetera, et cetera. So that would make Grodin more of an asshole. And now he's sort of invested in this and that he's covering it up. And there's more tension there other than just, I don't like him because he was my wife's first husband. And it would make the courtroom scene, I think, also work a little bit better. And that there's really no point in that courtroom scene by then, because Grodin knows and Guillaume knows that he was accompanied by 2 other men. So that I think would work a little better.
Yeah, make him into a villain.
Yeah, at least of a jerk. I mean, that's
It's like that's what the movie wants us to think, and that's the thing. It's like he's such a strict authoritarian husband who just doesn't understand his ditzy, lovable wife who takes care of all these people, and he hates the dogs, and he complains about the dogs all the time. It's
Wouldn't you?
Yes. Well, with five giant dogs, one of them being my future co-star in a very popular children's film, which I did find to be rather funny. That there's like a giant Saint Bernard. In this
I didn't
movie.
even make that connection.
I remember the first time I met Beethoven. It was on the set of Seems Like Old Times. Neil Simon actually introduced us.
Yeah, but I did laugh at that. But no, I agree. Like I think Charles Grodin should have just been. I don't know, like it's believable to have him be the villain and have Goldie Hawn leave him at the end of the movie, if that's the direction you want to go. And I think that's the direction they should have gone, is just make Charles Grodin the character that Goldie Hawn leaves at the end of the movie. Because we've seen plenty of those kinds of movies. Plenty of time where it's, oh, you're back and you're a changed man now. And or I love the lifestyle that you enabled, which was like literally fucking chaos 24/7, as opposed to Charles Grodin, who, I mean, again, is like a seemingly normal human being with seemingly normal human being reactions to your ex-wife's husband showing up and refusing to leave your house, effectively breaking and entering and living in your house. Like Charles Grodin's character really, should have been the villain of the movie, but justified, like understandably so. Because again, if your wife was just kissing some other random guy it's not really random, it's her ex-husband, you'd be pretty angry too, and he's just not angry enough. It's just, for all the Charles Grodin-ness of the movie, there's not enough of him doing that thing that I think he's really known for. And I think the movie really needed it. Yes. Yes.
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some. The short shrift given to Charles Grodin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have seen this before in so many other romantic comedies. Like I felt so bad for anybody that wanted to go out with Meg Ryan in the 80s and 90s. You know, it's just like, oh, this guy's boring, or this guy has allergies. And it's just like, just because Bill Pullman has allergies, it's okay to dump his ass. I don't get that at all. So yeah, there were a lot of times where I was just like, no, this guy's very, like, Grodin can do dickish so well, as we've continued to say. Just amp it up a little bit, because as it is in this movie, I'm just like, no, he's totally in the right. You know, like, yeah, he might want to give Chevy Chase a little bit of for the benefit of the doubt, but if your ex-wife's husband starts coming in like, oh, I had all these crazy things happen to me, I'm like, get the fuck out of town, you know, or let's take you to court and get this stuff all solved out for you.
Yeah, I'd try it in court. I mean,
yeah,
find those two guys.
Let's do it.
I'd rather just have.
I'm sure this can't be the first time this has happened.
Right. That's the whole deal with them.
I'd rather have my leads just act like idiots instead, like all three of them at odds with one another, constantly unable to figure out even the basest of base things, even though two of the three people in the scenario are lawyers, by the way. Like, literally. Right. That's the other thing. It's like they're supposed to be smart, and yeah, you would have thought they'd just be like, well, we'll just do this, this, and this, and you'll be fine. And and again, given that the pictures already exist, it's just, I don't know. The movie feels like it's spinning its wheels for almost the entire time, which is so strange to me. Because again, given how many times Chevy Chase is under the bed, given how many times Goldie Hawn almost tells Charles Grodin but doesn't until she does, it's just, I don't know. I'm shocked that this movie just didn't have a stronger narrative, because the performances are fun, but I'm just surprised that the narrative just kind of meanders. And by the end of it, you're just like, I forgot that they haven't dealt with the other bank robbers yet. But they did, but they didn't. It's like, and I'm not sure I care enough about them to see their story through at the end, because the story kind of gets handed off to Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. So why do we need to go, because like we've already said, they have to have everybody in the courtroom at the end of the movie because slapstick comedy. Like, okay.
It's the sitcom conceit. That's why it's sitcom-y to me, is everybody has to act a certain way to propel the story. Like you said at the beginning, Chris, if we don't do that, then we don't have a movie.
Right.
Or it needs to be just a lot sharper and clearer written. And there are ways to do it where it makes sense for him to constantly be hiding. Like Mike mentioned, to have him actually do more crimes or be suspected of more crimes, more mistakes that make it look like he is an actual criminal, a repeat offender, and go that way to where it's like the whole state is actually trying to track him down, because from Big Sur to LA, he's robbed all of these gas stations. He's hijacked cars. He's carjacked people, whatever. But then he's too big. Then he's too much of a bad guy, and he loses our sympathy, I guess. So, everybody has to be kind of likable in this, it seems.
Yeah. And that's
the downfall.
Yeah, I totally agree. It ends up, you really can't have a movie like this without one of the love triangle trio being kind of the one you don't want to see end up with someone at the end of the movie. And it's just, it's not there here. And I don't watch romantic comedies very often, and it's not for any particular reason, but I've seen enough to know that, again, like, this movie is really operating on some of like the tropiest tropes of rom-coms. And like you mentioned, Begley, one of the big ones is characters having to act in a what I would consider to be naive, or even one could consider stylized way of like just not using what so many of us would consider to be common sense. Like, it's that thing in the movies where it's like two characters sitting on a bench talking, and one's like, I'm leaving to go out overseas tomorrow. Is there anything you want to tell me? And they sit there and stare at each other. And the one character wants to say, I love you, but doesn't. And they know if they just said it, that person might like stick around. And it's like, it's a narrative. So we get that, and that's fine and all, but I don't think as the screenwriters care enough about going further into those ideas and really exploring them at its surface level. But in my mind, if it's surface level, don't even introduce it, because that means you've examined it and decided it's not worth your time, which I would disagree. It's completely worth your time.
I mean, go back and watch His Girl Friday and just see how they treated like the Ralph Bellamy character, where he's a nice guy, but he just is no match for Cary Grant in that movie. When you've got Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant, and they are just going back and forth with this amazing banter, And then you've got Ralph Bellamy, who's just kind of like a Okie from Muskogee type of character. We're just like, what is this guy's problem? He's a nice dude, but he is no match. Like, you can tell, like, these two characters belong together. And this guy is definitely like the safe, kind of steady life type of character. And I don't get that Goldie Hawn is missing that craziness that she had when she had Nick. It's not like you look at those two and you're just like, oh, they belong together. I'd much rather see her and Charles Grodin have a good time at the end of it, because Charles Grodin deserves to be happy too.
It's always the squares that get left in the dust.
Well, you know what they say? I'm pretty sure Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn don't have a lot of they might have a lot of fun together, but I don't. Again, like, she divorced him for a reason. I think the movie forgot about that. That's the thing. It's like, it's just the narrative of the movie is so weird because, again, it's not that it doesn't go in the directions that you would think. It just doesn't really go anywhere with any of it. And by the end of it, the movie's like, see, they should be together. See, they should be together. It's like, no,
it's fate at that point.
Yeah, Charles Grodin's femoral artery has been cut and he's bleeding out in the back of a car. Like, there are bigger things at play here than Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn's relationship. And you mentioned, we mentioned the Chevy Chase physical stuff. I'm so glad he didn't do the limp throughout the whole movie because, oh my God, it's like, all the Chevy Chase physical comedy stuff in this movie was just too much for me. And I think it's because they really I wonder if Neil Simon, when they realized they were getting Chevy Chase, he's like, I gotta punch the pratfalls up like 1,000% now. But they're not. But it feels that way. It feels like someone who doesn't know how to do it, doing it the way that they are doing it, thinking that it's going to just work because Chevy Chase falling down has some like strength of comedy to it. But I don't know. For me, I've never been the one to resonate with that version of Chevy Chase, the falling down constantly. It's always about the quips.
One of them worked for me, and it was the falling down the stairs out of the mother-in-law house in the back. That one worked when Aurora catches him and makes him fall. That's the only one that worked for me. Because it makes sense.
Well, and again, that's the stunt man. You get Chevy Chase falls, but then you get the stunt man falls. So like the being thrown out of the car or falling off of when he's going up the trellis. Yeah. There are a few of them where you're just like, wow, this is really bad. Like, they don't even try to do like a Texas switch with the trellis one. I thought for sure it'd be, okay, stunt man falls, Chevy Chase comes out of the bush type of thing. Yeah. No, they just cut, and that's how they transition from that stunt man to Chevy Chase. But yeah, it's the stunt guy was definitely getting his pay for this movie. That's for sure.
Thank you for mentioning that trellis Texas switch, because that shit made me laugh. So, because given how many times we saw it in Naked Gun, where this show essentially came from, like, that made me laugh because I was like, that's a Frank Drebin thing done really poorly.
They do try a little bit in the toss from the car. He gets to roll down some sand for an insert shot. So try to cover it that way, which I appreciated a little bit. But I mean, even that roll down the hill could have been extended to make it just ridiculous. Right. Speaking of Naked Gun, just have it be like the tallest hill in that part of the state, He
rolls past a couple having a picnic.
Yeah.
And he rolls past like somebody else. Yeah. It should have been, a lot
somebody
more to it.
Using the metal detector, all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't work. They don't land at all for me. And I know I've said it probably on at least one of the episodes we've already recorded, if not both, that physical comedy is the lowest common denominator of humor for me. It just never lands. And that's just me. And I'm sure that there are people now, and there were people back then in the theater, every time he fell, they laughed. But I don't know. It's never worked for me.
That's really unfortunate, Mark, because I don't remember Under the Rainbow being full cerebral comedy.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of these movies where that is, it. I mean, having seen 3 of the vacation films, I can safely say that it's not all that. And especially Christmas Vacation, the physical humor is done very well.
Superbly, one might even
say. That one actually works for me pretty much all the way through. European Vacation I haven't seen in forever, but and even the first Vacation, I think most of it is done well, and it's not the focus. So but I'm sure there are others that I haven't seen where that's going to be the go-to to get a laugh, and it most likely is not going to work for me.
And that's the thing, because I hadn't really thought about that style of the Chevy Chase performance where he is doing the pratfall. Because again, like I didn't watch SNL as a kid. Like I mean I did, but it was like the 90s, so it wasn't that same time. And the only Chevy Chase that I saw was in Fletch, and Fletch has a couple bits of physical comedy, but I feel like by that time I think everybody understood that like the thing that is going to really put Chevy Chase over the top in these performances is his ability to, like ad lib and do improvisational like quips and comedy. Because I don't know how many of those are in the script and how many are just him doing it. Because I know, as do both of you, he is really good at that kind of stuff, at just being off the cuff like that. And yeah, like I'm not going to say I didn't laugh during this movie, but I laughed a couple times early on, but primarily in any time that Chevy Chase feels put upon early on in the movie, like the thing with like we've already mentioned, the gas station attendant where he's like grabbing his leg, like stuff like that. But like, that's the physical stuff that worked for me with Chevy Chase, like trying to get the gas station attendant's attention. Like that's the kind of physical comedy, not him flying out of windows and rolling down hills like he's fucking, what was it? Arsenio at the beginning of Amazon Women on the Moon. It's like that. It's like that, but like that actually works. Like that's actually funny. In this movie, I honestly feel like the pratfall stuff doesn't serve this movie at all. Like it's out of another movie completely. Yeah,
it's his shtick. I know we kind of talked about this scene a little bit already. The car, I guess it's sort of not really a chase, but when Chester TK Carter runs the stop sign and we've got the cops. And we all know, and Goldie Hawn knows at that point, that Chevy's in the back. Chester might as well. And he has a blanket, but when the cop is at the window, he's holding it up like this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can see his hands and the top of his head in the corner of the frame. And I'm like, why isn't he just under the blanket? That was so bizarre.
What about this man in the back of your car?
Yeah.
Right.
What is he doing?
I think that cop is Jack Lemmon's son. I think that's Christopher Lemon.
Huh. And it was kind of weird that he was the cop from the night before, but the other cop wasn't.
Right.
I just found that odd.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, again, I thought the cops were going to be much more of a presence in this movie. And especially how they're outside and, watching the house. So it's just like, well, that's pretty smart. That's pretty cool. And, she forgets about them and brings them the chicken accidentally. I was like, okay. But yeah, I wanted them to be a force, but they just they're there, and then they stop them for the traffic and somehow believe their bullshit story and start to take them to, where are they taking them to, the hospital or to court? Because she can't keep her story straight. But
one of the two. Yeah.
Right.
They're getting an escort. That's all I caught from that. I'm like, I think I missed a line of dialogue.
I think that's it for them, though. I don't think they ever come back.
No, that's it. They're done then, which is odd because they're in consecutive scenes. They're there at the party, and then they're there the next morning. Same cop, or one of the
that
same
she doesn't
cops.
even recognize. Yeah. He's like, thanks for the chicken. She's like, what? Like, oh, boy. Okay.
Hey, characters have to be stupid,
Yeah. No offense either to Marvin Hamlish, but I kind of miss this not having a cool Barry Manilow theme song. I really was hoping for that, especially when it starts off with like that helicopter shot over the water and everything. I was like, where's my Barry Manilow song?
Yeah, apparently, and I don't know how much I believe this, but Paul McCartney wrote a Seems Like Old Times tune that was supposed to be used that wasn't. I know he has a song called Seems Like Old Times as well.
I know that they're friends.
Who's that?
Paul, wait, did you say Paul McCartney or Paul Simon? Okay, yeah.
I meant Paul McCartney. If I said Paul Simon, I misspoke. But
well, I was thinking of both because I know that, well, this doesn't mean that they're friends, but I'm pretty sure that there's a music video that
You Can Call Me Al.
You can call me Al, baby.
Well, no. I think there's also a music video for Spies Like Us where Chevy Chase plays a record producer in it for the Paul McCartney song.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because that was the title song was Spies Like Us. That not to be outdone by Live and Let Die, but
okay, yeah.
Spies Like Us definitely was a theme song. Yes.
I mean, Live and Let Die
didn't
has
know
a
that.
great Paul McCartney reggae section, so
Oh yeah, I know you like that the best.
that's my favorite part of
Hey.
the whole song.
As far as I'm concerned, it's the best James Bond song. So
I
It's up
agree.
there.
We can all-
It is up
Okay.
there.
I agree, but that doesn't mean I can't look at Paul McCartney and go, "Why were you doing the reggae thing, man?"
Oh, I love it. I think
because
it's great.
music is the international language.
Oh, got it. Okay,
Mhm.
fair.
It's not cultural appropriation. Chris, come on.
Cultural appropriation. I wasn't even going there. I just think it's funny to hear Paul McCartney do reggae is all.
Obla di obla da.
Also fair. Yeah, this I don't know. Again, like I didn't have any expectations going into this movie, but I definitely think the movie just I feel like for me the movie just could have been better if everyone involved had taken the time to just shore up the script, because they had the right idea with casting the right people. I mean, at least the two leads and Charles Grodin, who doesn't have anything to do, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Robert Guillaume is underused. I love him.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I think TK Carter gets enough screen time.
Mm-hmm.
The Aurora is great. You know, we got to have the sassy Mexican housekeeper in there.
Mhm.
Pretty much a 70s and 80s staple. She's
Yeah, it's
not out
really-
eating chicken.
I was really hoping that TK Carter would call somebody Buana in this one as well.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Honestly, the TK Carter character he's like, he almost steals the movie. He's so much fun. Like he is having a great time. You can tell, like just being in this movie with the people that he's, starring opposite, which he's opposite everybody.
Mhm.
Because he gets to interact with everybody. I think he, for me, might be the best part of the movie, TK Carter, because again, like I haven't seen him in a lot. I know he was in Amazon Women on the Moon, and I know obviously he's in The Thing, but this is like a pretty extended performance from him.
He's great. I would
Yeah.
say he's definitely one of my favorite things about it. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize he would be in it that much, to be honest with you. I knew he was in it. We discussed that on one of the other episodes, but he's in it quite a bit.
He's in it a lot. I mean, he's almost a third lead. It's less Charles Grodin and more him. Like he's really in a lot of the movie.
He's even in the courtroom at the end, pops up
Yeah.
and says hi to the judge.
I mean, I love that bit when, we're talking about the whole thing of like all Chevy Chase has to do is explain it and it would all go away. That's true. But I do like when he says that out loud and he says, "Is that how it works, Chester?" And TK Carter right back with, "Not my neighborhood."
Yeah. Yep.
Like that was good. That was good.
Yeah, they get some decent progressive stuff in there. And then of course, but except for calling the Native Americans Indians the whole time.
Mhm.
Our Indian, my Indian, your Indians.
The Indians, yeah, your Indians is a good one.
What is she says something to Chester at one point too. He calls her boss and she's like, "Don't call me boss. Didn't you see Roots?"
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
That's like
That
the
was
first
good.
interaction that they have with each other.
Yes.
Haven't
I
you
thought
seen
that was
Roots?
great.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Anything else we want to talk about with seems like old times?
No, I think we did good. Almost talked the entire length of the movie.
Yeah. The other gag that I also appreciated is when Chevy takes the bone to the throat in the kitchen when she opens the door.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was the other sight gag or practical gag I liked. That's about it.
Well, I don't know if Under the Rainbow has a lot of sight gags. It might.
I'm sure it does.
I'm sure it will. But that is the next movie that we are covering on the Chasing Chevy Chase in a Chevy podcast. Which I think is the
Got to the levee. It was dry. I cried.
Christ.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see this mess. This is one I have not seen at all.
Same. I've heard about it. That's all I know.
Yes.
And it has Chevy Chase and Carrie Fisher, which seems like a weird pairing to me. But I'm sure it's a great movie. I'm sure we're going to have a great time with it. And they will probably have very little problems, right?
It will
excited
all
to
be
see-
very politically correct. I'm sure we could have
Yeah,
a little person on this episode and they would just be like, "Yeah, all checks out. It's all good. It's all true."
Checks out.
Yeah.
Hey, it'll be another pairing of Billy Barty and Chevy Chase.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Although they didn't interact in Foul Play, but
Just keep thinking about foul play when we're watching this movie, though.
I'm excited to see Carrie Fisher in something other than a Star Wars movie, to be honest with you.
Memory serves. She might be partially undressed in this movie. Not as much as she was in Amazon Women on the Moon, but yeah, not one of those wild Hollywood parties like you see in that.
Or Star Wars Return of the Jedi. I mean, she's pretty
now I'm even more excited to see it.
And
I may have to rewatch Amazon Women on the Moon because I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was part of she's in that VD movie section.
Oh.
And they show some of the wild parties that they're in where it's like all the women in like skimpy, but not that skimpy. You know, like it's very, very tame since it's supposed to be from the 1950s, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. It's the one with Paul Bartel where he's the doctor. And
yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Thing with the cigarettes.
Exactly. Yeah.
I forgot you guys weren't on me with that episode. That was Father Malone, who I watched that with. Yeah. Yep. Carrie Fisher. Yeah, I'm excited. So until then, where can people find you and your assorted works, Mr. Mark Begley?
You can find me at wakeupheavy.com and weirdandwaymedia.com for both of my shows, Wake Up Heavy and Cambridge and Wishawn, and on social media at Wake Up Heavy.
Where can people find you on X?
At Wake Up Heavy.
I was going to say
my handle on all social media.
You're going to find me down at the local gas station on X, if you know what I mean. Mike, what about you? Where can people find you and the things that you work on?
I was talking to a coworker who insisted on calling it X. And I was just like, what is wrong with this guy? And then later on, he was talking about what he likes to do for fun and how him and his kids are really into rocketry. We like to send up rockets into the chemtrails so we can see what heavy metals are in there.
No.
No wonder you call it X. Okay. All right. This makes sense.
So, oh my God.
Word to the wise. If somebody you know calls it X instead of Twitter, go the other way. So, I'm on there as Pro Boothcast and other places as Projection Booth Podcast because, on weekends and Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday afternoons every other week, I work on a podcast called The Projection Booth. And also am on a podcast called The Shabby Detective, and I'm super excited, Chris, because I am about to go upstairs and watch the next episode of Columbo so we can talk about our favorite rumpled detective. Both of those shows, as well as a lot more, is available over at weirdandwaymedia.com. And Chris, how about yourself?
Well, similarly to y'all, I can be found over at weirdandwaymedia.com. The Culture Cast, which is a weekly show, bunch of weekly shows, or 2 weekly shows, my 2 weekly shows, I guess, and then our monthly and other shows are all there. So go check them out. Give them a listen if you're into movies or TV shows from the 70s with cops. That might be I don't know what our thing is with
Check
70s
out From the Files of Police Squad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes. Also that. Yeah. Where this random little project essentially came from was the three of us going, let's talk about Naked Gun. And we did. And all that can be found at Weirding Way Media, including this show that you're listening to right now. So until the next time you hear us, we'll catch you on the next episode.